Debunking the myth of stress. Hi everyone, Mazen here. Welcome to the Maximum Life. Today, I want to zero in on a subject most of us spend a great deal of time thinking about: stress. The word alone is rampant in our culture. Stressful is the word we use to cover an entire spectrum of different emotions and sensations. As long as the situation is at least mildly uncomfortable, our culture has conditioned us to label that discomfort stress. Experiences such as being extremely productive, facing challenges, working under pressure to achieve a desired outcome, making changes, and standing up to adversity all qualify for being labeled as stressful. But are any of these things necessarily negative? The word stress certainly has negative connotations, but being in demand means you are being productive and your services are in need. Facing challenges means you are growing and expanding. Focused work to achieve your goals means you are passionate and dedicated. Making changes is just as an unavoidable part of life. So let's ask ourselves the real question: is stress an unavoidable part of life? What is stress exactly? Why do we give it so much power? The image comes to my mind of a dark, billowing, malevolent cloud that never entirely dissipates, constantly looming over us. It has a reputation for threatening everything from our relationships to our sanity or even our very lives. Why would our culture condition us to view stress as the insurmountable monster? When it comes to cultural conditioning, the answer never changes. I wish it were more favorable, but the hard truth remains: our culture conditions us to be better consumers. The research shows that we spend more money when we are stressed. In my ongoing quest to uncover these cultural conditionings that cause us to operate in ways to do and not to serve us in living the maximal life, I saw that we all must debunk the myth of stress. We know that the body is a reporter. We also know when the body is telling us the truth. While the reports from our body may always be accurate, our mind can still read the reports wrong. This is because our brain is a bank and we can only withdraw what we deposit. If we are filled with negative thoughts and the unreasonable expectations largely imposed upon us by cultural conditioning, and any sensation that can be defined as a stress will be defined as a stress. The chemicals released in our brains when we are nervous or stressed are the exact same chemicals released when we're excited. The only difference in how we experience these chemicals depends entirely on our mindset. This is powerful stuff. And what this means is that we have the power to choose whether stress is negative or positive. Positive stress? What? That's right. No, I didn't make this up. In my research, I uncovered that positive stress is a scientifically tested and accepted concept. By the way, in terms of defining stress, we will definitely go into more detail to explore and figure out what experts have to say about it. But I wanted to mention that overall, stress is just a concept, a mindset, and nothing more. There is no dark, billowing, malevolent cloud looming over us. We have the power, and we always had that power, to clear that cloud in an instant. Science proves stress can be transformed into energy simply by adjusting our own attitude. The first to demonstrate the existence of biological stress was the brilliant scientist and endocrinologist Heinz Sely. In 1934, at only 28 years of age, Sely believed that he was on the cusp of discovering an entirely new hormone. Sely injected rats with an ovarian extract that elicited a unique physiological response. When he tried to confirm his findings by injecting other rats with a saline solution, he noted they too had the same response. This killed Sely's theory that there was still an undiscovered hormone. That's when it occurred to Sely that perhaps the response was not because of the liquid being injected, but a response to the trauma of the injection itself. This led Sely to discover the concept that would become one of the foremost concerns in modern society: stress. Further research uncovered that over time, humans and animals alike would eventually adapt to stressors by building increased immunities and resilience. Certain stressors could even produce desirable effects. Sely and his team prove that stress isn't necessarily harmful. Stress can serve as a stimulus for growth and adaptation. The evidence of this existence of positive stress was so apparent that Celia had to break the stress response into two different groups: distress and eustress. You've probably heard of distress. Eustress literally means good stress, and we definitely don't hear much about it in today's pervading culture. So which stressors are distress, the negative, harmful forms of stress, and which stressors are eustress, the positive, useful forms of stress? The answer is distress and eustress are biochemically identical. They are the same. To quote Dr. Celia directly, "It is not the stress that kills us, it's our reaction to it." And adopting the right attitude can convert a negative stress into a positive one. Wow! Stress can be repurposed through positive thinking. We have the power to transform our stress response from something that depletes us into something that serves us, simply by changing our thoughts, mindsets, and reactions toward our situation. So here we've been all this time thinking stress is something we need to avoid and prevent. Stress is harmful. Stress causes premature death. Stress leads to chronic illnesses. Meanwhile, we've had the scientific data since 1930s that proves stress is nothing more than a non-specific response of the body to any demand for change. Change, as we all know, is an unavoidable and necessary aspect of life. Celia concluded that it is impossible to have life without stress. In fact, in his book, Stress Without Distress, he says to be totally without stress is to be dead. With the right attitude, we can reprogram and reappraise how we experience stress. We can choose to embrace and harness this biochemical response as energy. And as we know, energy is the antidote. To quote this brilliant guy once more, "Man should not try to avoid stress any more than he would shun food, love, or exercise." Just wow. Another person you should know about whose respected research is debunking the myth of stress is Dr. Kelly McGonigal, a renowned health psychologist at Stanford University. For many years, Dr. McGonigal worked to help people learn how to avoid stress. Her outlook was the same for most of us. Stress is bad. She felt it was her job to figure out how people could minimize the negative effects of stress. Her findings on the subject blew her mind. A recent study found that the very small portion of Americans who viewed stress as helpful rather than harmful had a whopping 43% lower chance of premature death than those who viewed stress as harmful. At first, the thought that she had, those must be because people with positive mindset towards stress haven't experienced stress very often. If you hardly ever have to deal with it, of course you're going to think stress isn't so bad. When her researchers looked deeper, they were shocked to discover that the number of stressful events from both groups were virtually the same. After exhausting every possible variable, McGonigal was left wondering, could something as simple as one's attitude to stress and towards stress truly extend their lifespan? Further studies prove that perceiving stress as a challenge rather than threat does more than just alleviate the harmful effects of stress. Perceiving stress as a challenge actually yields immeasurable health benefits. The positive sides of stress. McGonigal's quest for an answer resulted in her book, The Upside of Stress. And in her book, she details the large body of evidence that she discovered, which shows that some individuals learn to assess stressors as a challenge rather than threats. Researchers have since dubbed this outlook as the challenge response, and it is characterized by viewing stress as something productive, an energy, a drive, and a stimulus for growth. In the mindset of a stressful situation, those who demonstrate a challenge response accept the aspects of the situation they cannot control and focus primarily on the aspects that they can control. This attitude toward stress enables those individuals not only to manage, but even thrive and evolve. The reason behind this is pure science, my man. Stress triggers the flooded release of many hormones into our systems. Two in particular are very important: cortisol and DHEA. The amount of DHEA released by the stress has its own term, the growth index of stress. Both cortisol and DHEA are vital and necessary to our bodies. However, prolonged exposure to high levels of cortisol are associated with inflammation, a weakened immune system, digestion issues, and depression. By contrast, DHEA has been linked to reduced risk of anxiety, depression, heart disease, and range of other conditions. DHEA is also a neurosteroid, which promotes brain growth and regeneration, hence the name growth index of stress. So when under stress, ideally we would want to release more DHEA than cortisol. Here is the mind-blowing part. The studies proved that people who react to stress with a challenge response had a higher ratio of DHEA versus those who perceived stress as a threat. This means if you reframe stress in your mind as a challenge rather than as a threat, you will release more DHEA than cortisol. Are you feeling that power I mentioned earlier yet? As a result of making the choice to perceive stress as a challenge, your brain growth index of stress will naturally increase, and you will actually experience health benefits instead of detriments. Energy is the antidote, and all this time, access to increased energy has been with us, untapped and disguised as a stress. As Walter Cannon observed, stress triggers our fight or flight response. This means our sympathetic nervous system directs our entire body to mobilize energy so we are primed to act on our own behalf. Your liver excretes more levels of fat and sugar into your bloodstream for fuel. Your lungs begin to drink in more oxygen to support an increased heart rate. Your heart pumps that fat and sugar-fueled blood into your brain and muscles. The adrenaline and cortisol helps your muscles and brain to use this energy more efficiently. Your pupils take in more light and your hearing sharpens. The mind wandering stops and less important priorities drop away. Stress can be harnessed into a focused attention which can increase performance. You also get a motivational boost from the right mix of hormones produced by the stress response. These chemicals, mixed with the right mindset, can increase your sense of confidence and power. In extreme cases, this stress response has been responsible for phenomenal and extraordinary occurrences. One in particular that really stood out for me happened in the state of Oregon a few years ago. Jeff Smith, a farmer, is out in his field working out with his tractor when he notices a stump that he needs to pull out. As he was trying to maneuver with his tractor to uproot the stump, his foot slipped into the clutch and the entire 3,000-pound tractor flips over, pinning him underneath the steering column. He begins screaming for help, and the only ones around that could hear him is his two daughters, only 14 and 16 years old of age. And they run toward their father's voice. The girls call 911 and begin digging into the earth, hoping that she could get her father out and he could slide out from underneath the massive tractor. Haley Smith, the younger girl, says, "I cannot dig fast enough. I just cannot dig fast enough." The sisters quickly realize they do not have time to wait for emergency crews. Haley and her older sister Hannah each grab a side of the tractor and lift with all their might. With their adrenaline pumping, the girls try to 6 or 7 times, each time building momentum. Jeff Smith finally feels the tractor left just enough to shimmy most of his body out, ensuring his survival. Hannah Smith, Jeff's 16-year-old daughter, later told the reporters, "I do not know how I lifted it. It was just so heavy and I could feel it. I could just feel the weight. But we just did it. We both did." There are countless recordings of events just like this one, and each of them are a testament to the incredible energy available and the value that can be gained when we harness our stress responses in a positive way. Here are the steps you can take right now to transform your stress with positive thinking. Target negative thinking and deploy gratitude. What areas in your life do you typically think negatively about? Your work, your commute, your relationships? Start by choosing only one and focus on approaching it with a more positive way. Gratitude is a champion way to stir up a positive outlook fast. Find things, even if it's small, about your stressful situation to be grateful for. Make a list of it to help you remember, and then remind yourself of those things when negative thinking tries to take hold. Take a minute anytime you feel overwhelmed and negative stress is taking a front seat. That is the perfect indication that it's time to take a minute. Give yourself just 60 seconds to take deep, relaxing breaths that can realign you with your purpose and recalibrate how you are expending your energy. Inhale for a count of 4 seconds through the nose, hold at the top of your breath for 4 seconds, and then exhale for 4 seconds through the mouth. Repeating this for only 1 minute can reset your attitude for positive thinking. Here's another good one. Get some fresh air. Our brains have neurological pathways dedicated specifically to become more calm and present when we are outside observing nature. If possible, take a 10 to 15 minute walk and focus on the elements of nature, the plants, the wind, the trees, the birds, and the bees. The exercise will get your blood pumping, and the natural surroundings will also help you utilize the stress chemicals in your system as positive energy. Thank you all for joining me for this incredible stigma-blasting episode about stress and the powerful effects of positive thinking. We can always expect some stress, but now that we know we have the power to approach stress as either a challenge or a threat, we have the power to harness a stressor to our advantage as an opportunity to rise to the challenge. Now that we know a variety of healthy responses to stress, we get to choose the response that leads us to our maximal life. If you like what you have seen and heard, please subscribe.